Hello, my incredible class. This is Mrs. Adams. Today we're looking at the Vocabulary from Classical Roots book, and we are on Lesson 7. Remember, because this is a video, you can pause, rewind, and play the video again as many times as you'd like if you need to hear something more than once. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's turn to page 31 to get to Lesson 7. Remember the tips in the back of our book to highlight the root word in the definition section, to highlight the directions and the important parts, to read all the definitions and vocabulary examples before you start doing the exercises, and to use the process of elimination to find your answer. Let's start at the top. Lesson 7, lowering with prefixes. Remember, pre means before, so it's going to be the part of the word that comes before the root. The prefix D, as in decline, means down. The prefix sub, as in submarine, means under or below. In each of the following keywords, underline the prefix. So here is our box of keywords. Let's find all of the prefix D and sub. D as in decrease, D in dejected, D in demote, D in denominator, D in descend, sub in subdue, sub in subheading, sub in submerge, sub in subside, and sub in substance. Using prefix clues. So we're going to do this section before we read the definition. The prefix D, meaning down, and sub, meaning under or below, give you clues about meaning. When you spot one of these prefixes on a word, you have a key to the word's meaning. Use the underlined prefix clues to help you match the following columns. Remember, D means down and sub means under or below. So first, let's read all of our options. Subheading, descend, submerge, dejected. Our possible choices are A, to put underwater, B, feeling downhearted, C, below the main heading, and D, to go down. Let's start up at number 1, subheading. Well, we know that sub means under or below, so we can take a look at our choices, and we have 2 that talk about being under or below. So by process of elimination, we know that 1 will not be B or D because those prefixes are down. So subheading. Well, let's read our choices. To push underwater or to go below the main heading. Well, sub is below, and we're talking about the heading, so that's an easy fit. C. Remember to cross it out once you use it. Let's look at number 2, descend. Well, our prefix is D, and D means down, so that means we can already know that it's not going to be A. That leaves us 2 choices. Is descend feeling downhearted, or is descend to go down? Well, I know I've heard of the word descend when talking about going downhill or hiking deep into a canyon. So for me, it would make sense to go with to go down. D for 2. Pause here and see if you can finish the next 2, 3, and 4 on your own. Okay, great. Now that you've finished the first page, let's look at the definitions and all of their example sentences. Remember, we're going to highlight the root or the prefix for the first 5 words that start with D, meaning the Latin word for down. Number 1, decrease. As a verb, to make less, to become smaller. Sonia's interest in playing the guitar decreased when she realized she'd have to practice every day. Decrease also can be used as a noun, the process of getting smaller. A decrease in funding kept the library from buying more books. Word number 2, dejected, also derived from the Latin meaning to throw. Dejected is used as an adjective. Remember, that's a describing word. Downhearted, in low spirits, and unhappy. Every member of the team felt dejected about losing the championship. Word number 3, demote, also derived meaning to move. As a verb, remember that's an action word, to lower in rank or position, to move down or back. After fooling around during practice, Brianna was demoted from her starting position to a seat on the bench. It could also be used in the word form demotion as a noun. Word number 4, denominator. As a noun, remember a person, place, or thing. In this case, it's a thing. The numeral below the line or to the right of the line in a fraction. Yes, we're doing math, even in language arts. In the fraction 1/2, 1 is the numerator and 2 is the denominator. Pay close attention to this because this will help you later on. Numerator, and the bottom one is the denominator. Word number 5, descend, meaning to climb. As a verb or an action word, to come down, to go from a higher to a lower place. The climbers felt for handholds on the rock face to help them descend to the bottom safely. It could also be used as a noun, a descent, so that would be a thing. Let's read the nota bene. The prefix D usually means down, as in the keywords in this lesson, but it can also mean off of, as in derail, and undo, as in decode. The prefix sub, from the Latin meaning under or below. Word number 6, subdue. As a verb or an action word, to bring under control, to quiet down, to conquer. Omar had to work hard to subdue his annoyance when his cousin teased him. Word number 7, subheading. As a noun or a person, place, or thing, in this case a thing, the title or heading for one section of an outline or paper. The article of Scotland included such subheadings as climate, history, and economy. So here would be the title heading, the main heading, and these 3 are subheadings. As you can see, then they have a pretend paragraph written underneath. Word number 8, submerge, also meaning to plunge. As a verb or an action word, it means to move or be pushed underwater. The dolphins rose from the water in a smooth arc and then gracefully submerged themselves again. As a noun or a thing, it would be a submersion. Word number 9, subside, also from the meaning to sit or to sink down. As a verb or an action word, to go down, recede, settle, sink to a lower level. After the flood, residents of one area had to wait several days until the water subsided before returning to their homes. And number 10, subsistence, also meaning to stand. As a noun or a thing, the minimum amount to sustain life. Thousands of years ago, before farming began, the people's subsistence was based on what they could hunt and gather. As a verb, we could look at this word as subsist. Now that we've read the definitions, let's turn to page 34 and try exercise A. Now, what I really want to point out here is we are focusing this time on antonyms. In the last few lessons, we have focused on synonyms, which are words that are nearly close in meaning. This word, antonym, starts with the prefix. This word, antonym, starts with the prefix anti, which means the opposite or against. So as we try to find the words of the best antonym, or the word most nearly opposite in the meaning to the word in boldface type. So now in exercise A, we're not going to be looking for the word that's closest in meaning. We're going to be looking for the word that's most opposite in meaning. Remember, when you read your options, before you pick one, read through all 4 to make sure you have the correct choice. Is a dejected mood A, sad? Is sad the opposite of dejected? Is happy the opposite of dejected? Is angry the opposite of dejected? Or is peaceful the opposite of dejected? Remember, you can always turn to that word in the definitions on the previous page to be sure. So dejected means downhearted, in low spirits, or unhappy. So the opposite of unhappy would be happy. If we go back to exercise A, number 1, we see here that we have a choice as happy, and happy then would be the opposite of dejected. So let's write B. Number 2, subsisting on one meal. Is the opposite of the word subsisting continuing on one meal? Filling up is the opposite? Is satisfied the opposite? Or is not able to live the opposite? One thing that stands out to me is that the first 3 choices, continuing, filling up, and satisfied, all seem to be in the realm of more. Whereas the choice D, not able to live, is more on the negative side. So remember, we want the opposite of subsisting. Let's turn to that definition to be sure. So subsistence, or to subsist, also we could look at this as subsisting, is still the verb or the action word. So it could mean the minimum amount to sustain life. So we want the opposite. So the opposite would be to not be able to live. D. Okay, number 3, the fraction's denominator. Oh, remember in the definition, I said pay attention to this one. So is the opposite of a denominator the value? Is the opposite of denominator the place? Is the opposite of the denominator the numerator? Or is the opposite a problem? Well, in a fraction, 1/2, the denominator is the bottom number. So the opposite of the bottom would be the top, which is the numerator. The numerator is the top number. C is your answer. Try number 4 and 5 on your own. Let's take a look at exercise B, meaning in context. Remember, we've been talking about context is what it is surrounded by. So the text or the words that our word is surrounded by to help it make sense. We're going to use these words to fill in the blanks in the following paragraph. The strategy to be able to fill out these fill in the blank paragraphs is to 1, read all of your options first. 2, read the whole paragraph with the blanks first. And then 3, try to fit in the words that make the most sense to you, and then process of elimination, you can fill in the rest. You can always double check by reading the definitions. So first, let's read our choices. Submerged, descend, subside, decreased, or subdued. Now let's read our paragraph as a whole. The swollen river near the campground was slow to after the storm. The campers had been noisy, active, and energetic the preceding day. Preceding is before. But after looking at the overnight damage, they were quiet and They could no longer all the steps leading to the river because those at the bottom were still During the next day, the number of campers quickly since many of them decided to head home. Now that I've read through the whole thing, I'm going to see if there are any numbers that stand out to me right away. One thing I remember is that the word submerged had to do with water. So let's see if we can find a place where that can fit in easily. the campground was slow to submerged. That doesn't make sense because it's past tense. So that's another clue. ED means it happened in the past. So let's find a sentence where it would fit in the past. They were quiet and submerged. Well, that could fit, but here they're talking about the campers. Fortunately for them, I don't think the campers were underwater. They could no longer submerged, doesn't make sense because it's past tense. All the steps leading to the river because those at the bottom were still submerged. Now the rocks at the bottom being submerged under the water flow, that would make sense. So let's put in submerged on number 4. Cross out the ones you use. Let's see if we can figure out what might go in this next one. During the next day, the number of campers quickly, since many of them decided to head home. Okay, so here we're going to be talking about something about the campers themselves. So let's see what our choices are. During the next day, the number of campers quickly descend. Something about that tense doesn't feel right. During the next day, the number of campers quickly subside. Again, something about the tense doesn't feel right. During the next day, the number of campers quickly decreased since many of them decided to head home. That one makes sense. But our other choice also has a past tense. During the next day, the number of campers quickly subdued since many of them decided to head home. This would be where you could go back to your definitions to read both of these two and see which one fits the best. So we talked about decrease or decreased ed at the end, meaning to make less or to become smaller. And we also have the option of subdued, meaning to bring under control, to quiet down, or to conquer. So let's go back to exercise B. During the next day, the number of campers quickly decreased. Did they get less? The numbers got less since many of them decided to head home. I think that one fits great. Okay, why don't you try to do numbers 1, 2, and 3 on your own? Great, let's read exercise C. Extend your vocabulary. The 4-word prefix pro. Let's highlight that. As you probably figured out in exercise A, the antonym of a keyword, demote, is promote. That makes sense. D being below and pro meaning above or before. Both words are formed with the prefix and a root. When you are promoted, you are moved up or forward. When you are demoted, you are moved down or backward. Let's look at page 35. On the word promote, the prefix pro, remember pre means before, so there's the prefix, has the meaning up and forward. It also has that meaning on all of the following words. So we have propellers, we have protecting, provisions, proposal, and projectile. On each line, write the word that best answers the question. So we have 5 choices and 5 sentences to see which one fits. We should read all of the sentences first. 1. Which word shows the intent of going forward into marriage? Which word names the spinning blades that help a helicopter move up? Now you might already be having some bells going ding, ding, ding in your head of words that you recognize. Which word means stepping forward to shield someone from harm? Which word names stocks of food packed by forward-thinking travelers? And number 5, which word names an object that shot forward through the air? So, up to number 1, which word shows the intent of going forward into marriage? You must have heard so far that a proposal is when one person says they want to marry another person. So proposal and marriage make sense because the proposal happens before the wedding. So we're going to write proposal on the line for number 1. Cross out what you've used. Number 2, which word names the spinning blades that help a helicopter move up? Okay, well, we know pro means up, and the propellers are the things that spin over at the top. Those are actually what help the helicopter lift. So let's pop the word propeller in. Cross out what you've used. Why don't you try 3, 4, and 5 all on your own? Hooray! You're all done.